Today's mindful moment, packed with insights but designed to fit into your busy life. One deep dive at a time.
It's so easy these days to feel like you're drowning in information, especially when it comes to politics. You want to be informed, you want to know what's going on, but it can feel impossible to separate what matters from all the noise.
I think that's a really common feeling, actually. It's just so much coming at us from every direction all
Yeah.
the time that it's hard to know what to focus on, what's real, what's not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes this book we're looking at today so interesting. David Pakman's The Echo Machine just came out March 25th, 2025, and it dives into this whole world of how right-wing extremism is shaping American politics and, maybe even messing with our ability to just think clearly and critically.
And that's really what we're going to try to do in this deep dive is sort of pull out the main arguments and the big picture from Pakman's book for you so you can get a handle on those key factors that he says are driving our current political climate without, having to read the whole thing yourself.
Right, like a cheat sheet to understanding what's going on. Okay, so the Echo Machine itself is about how media technology and political discourse all kind of come together and lead to this polarization and misinformation that we see in the US. So let's start with the basics. What is Pakman's central argument here?
Well, his main point is that right-wing extremism has been really successful at leveraging disinformation and taking advantage of the political divides that already exist in the U.S. And he points to the 2024 election cycle as a prime example of this, but it's bigger than just one election. He's actually worried about what he sees as a decline in critical thinking and media literacy across society. And that leads to this really fundamental problem where it's getting harder and harder for people to agree on a shared reality.
Wow, so we can't even agree on basic facts anymore? That's pretty scary. And Pakman uses this term, the intellectual race to the bottom. What does he mean by that?
So the intellectual race to the bottom is this idea that political discourse is shifting away from reasoned debate, where evidence and logic matter. And it's more about winning through emotional appeals, tribalism, even just being the loudest or most outrageous voice. And it's like this race to the bottom where the most emotionally charged message wins, even if it's not true. And you see this all the time online, right? Like an article that makes you angry or scared will get way more shares than something that's nuanced and well-researched.
Definitely. I mean, just look at what goes viral on social media.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the structure of the book. It's divided into 9 chapters, right? Can you give us a quick rundown of what each chapter covers?
Sure. So chapter 1 is all about setting the stage, looking at the historical factors that have led us to where we are politically today. Then in chapter 2, Pakman dives into this issue of declining critical thinking skills, which he sees as really central to the problem. And chapter 3 builds on that by exploring how, in our polarized world, the very idea of what is a fact is being challenged. It's like we're losing our grip on objective truth.
So that's the setup, the problems as he sees them.
Exactly. And then in chapter 4, he gets into this idea that we're prioritizing ideological purity over actually solving problems. And then in chapter 5, he lays out his own case for why he thinks policies on the left offer better solutions to the challenges facing the country.
So he's not just pointing fingers, he's putting forward his own ideas.
Right. But he also acknowledges that it's complicated. In chapter 6, he talks about how hard it is to have a productive conversation with a movement that he argues doesn't have clear or consistent policies. And then chapter 7 is kind of fascinating because he tries to understand why right-wing ideologies continue to be so successful despite all the problems he's laid out. He's really digging into the why here.
Understanding the why is crucial. And what about the last 2 chapters?
So chapter 8 is super practical. It's all about how to be a more responsible consumer of media in this crazy information environment we live in. And he stresses the importance of fact-checking and really being aware of bias in every source, even the ones you like. And then chapter 9 gets even broader and offers actionable steps that we can all take to improve political discourse and strengthen our democracy.
So he goes from identifying the problem to actually offering solutions, which I think is what a lot of us are looking for.
Definitely people want to know what they can do.
Right. So what are some of those concrete actions that Pakman suggests for improving our political conversations?
Well, he's all about strengthening critical thinking skills, media literacy, and public education. His argument is that if people are better at thinking critically, understanding how media works, and having a strong foundation of knowledge, they'll be less likely to fall for misinformation and more able to have real evidence-based discussions.
Makes sense. It's about giving people the tools they need to navigate this landscape. And you mentioned echo chambers earlier. That's a big theme in the book, right? Can you explain what Pakman means by that and why it's such a problem?
Sure. An echo chamber is basically any environment whether it's online or even just your close circle of friends, where you're mostly exposed to information and opinions that you already agree with. And it feels good, right? It's comforting to have your beliefs confirmed. But the problem is it keeps you from seeing other viewpoints and challenging your own assumptions. And Pakman argues that echo chambers are a huge factor in polarization because they make us think that everyone who disagrees with us is wrong or even bad. And so he really pushes readers to actively seek out different perspectives. That's how we start to break down those walls.
It's so easy to get stuck in that bubble, though, especially online. I mean, the algorithms are designed to show you more of what you already like.
Exactly. And that's where Pakman's advice on being a responsible media consumer comes in. He's really big on fact-checking. Don't just take things at face value, especially if they make you really emotional. Go and check it out from multiple sources. And he also talks about how important it is to understand that every media outlet, even the ones you trust, has its own biases. So you need to get your news from a variety of sources to get a more complete picture.
It's a lot of work, though, being that intentional about what you read and watch.
It is, but it's crucial if you want to be truly informed.
Absolutely. So what about social media? What role does Pakman think it plays in all of this?
He's kind of got a love-hate relationship with social media. He sees the potential for it to be this democratizing force, allowing more people to participate in public discourse and share information quickly. But he also points out how it can fragment our shared reality. Those algorithms we talked about, they're designed to keep you engaged. And that means they often promote the most extreme and emotional content. And social media can make those echo chambers even worse.
Yeah.
It's like this double-edged sword. It can connect us, but it can also trap us.
Yeah, it's definitely something to be mindful of. And as we've been talking, I keep thinking about how much of what Pakman's describing resonates with my own experience trying to stay informed. It feels like a constant struggle.
And that's what's so valuable about his analysis. It gives us a way to understand those feelings. Have you ever tried to have a conversation with someone who has completely different political views? And you're talking about the same event, but it's like you're speaking different languages.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Right, and that's where Pakman's ideas about critical thinking and echo chambers can help us make sense of those situations. It's like we're starting from different realities.
It's wild. And even though the book delves into some really charged political issues, the core message seems to be about improving how we think, regardless of our political beliefs.
Absolutely. I mean, Pakman definitely expresses his own political opinions in the book, but the heart of it is really about these fundamental skills of critical thinking and media literacy. And those are important for everyone, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. We're just trying to lay out his arguments here and let you decide what you think.
So to wrap up, what are the big takeaways from the Echo Machine? What should our listeners really remember?
I think the main themes are the intense polarization we're seeing in the U.S. Pakman's concern about this decline in critical thinking and media literacy and the powerful influence of echo chambers, but it's not all doom and gloom. He really emphasizes that we have the power to change things by working on our own critical thinking, becoming more savvy media consumers, and actively seeking out diverse perspectives.
It's a call to action.
Exactly. He's challenging readers to get involved, to really step up and help shape the future of American democracy by thinking critically and having meaningful discussions about policy instead of getting bogged down in these divisive cultural battles and misinformation.
Powerful stuff. It's like he's saying the health of our democracy depends on each of us taking responsibility for how we engage with information and with each other, even when we disagree. And that makes me wonder, considering all this talk about echo chambers, what's one small step our listeners could take this week to intentionally encounter a viewpoint different from their own?
That's a great question, something for all of us to think about. And for even more insights on the power of media and information, you can check out Mindful Moments on YouTube.
It's an AI audiobook analysis channel that dives into similar themes, exploring the ways we're influenced and how to think more critically.
Definitely worth a look.
Yeah.
And if you're enjoying this conversation, we encourage you to subscribe to our show for more deep dives like this.
Share it with your friends and family, too. The more people we can get thinking critically about these issues, the better.
Absolutely. And if you want to explore Pakman's work in more depth, you can find a link to purchase the Echo Machine in the show notes.
Supporting authors like Pakman helps us keep these important conversations going.
So thanks for joining us for this exploration of the Echo Machine.
And remember, keep those minds sharp and keep questioning the world around you.
That's what it's all about.